Welcome to the NAIFA webinar series, providing you with timely information and training each month on topics of interest. This is Brendan Burnett, Director of Professional Development and Education Programs, and today we are presenting Tax Planning, Opportunities for 2018. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017 that was signed into law last December is the most sweeping rewrite of the U.S. tax code in more than 30 years. Despite the passage of tax reform legislation, the tax code remains complex and lengthy. However, with the benefit of careful analysis and expertise, the tax code presents opportunities that can benefit both you and your clients. Today, tax experts Nick Palavita and Max Colliette will provide you with the latest and most relevant insights on the federal income tax. Nick Palavita is CEO of National Pension Partners, Adjunct Professor of the Graduate Tax Program at Northeastern University, and Adjunct Professor at the Campbell University School of Law. He is admitted to practice in the state of Florida, the U.S. Tax Court, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals, the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, and the Supreme Court of the United States. And as President of National Pension Partners, Max Colliette brings more than 30 years of retirement planning experience to the team. He also owns Intermountain Financial Education, which provides licensed continuing education to CPAs, insurance producers, and other financial professionals. And in addition, Max is president and managing principal of One Financial Advisors, a comprehensive financial services firm helping clients to maximize their wealth, retirement security, and financial protection. And thrilled to have both Nick and Max with us today. You can see them live on your screen along with their PowerPoint slides. During the presentation and question and answer session, you may type questions in the question box on the right side of your screen. Questions will be answered during the Q&A at the end of the program, and this webinar is being recorded. So let's begin. Max, welcome to the webinar.
Hey, well, thanks, Brendan. We'll have lots of fun today. Taxes are always an interesting question. So as we get started in this, I thought I'd go through here. There it goes. And if you want to see the pictures besides what's on the screen of both Nick and I, and we've kind of reviewed this, but let's talk first of how this whole tax code piece might be used as a door opener, because that's usually something, from my experience of working with advisors, that most advisors want to figure out how to do. And the question really is, and it's particularly the centers of influence and more specifically even CPAs who this week hopefully have finished their tax work on all the returns, and they probably had a few of their more well-heeled clients perhaps be a little distraught over their taxes. It seems to happen. So what you might ask, do you have clients that may need to reduce their adjusted gross income to take advantage of the 20% QIB deduction? And that can be a good question because many of them probably will. My experience is every CPA out there has that handful of clients that are important to them, and that this deduction will be a big deal. We're going to talk about that some today. And when we get into this, this is really going to be about working with pass-through entities and some of the tax burdens they share. And I'm going to let Nick kick in with some of this now, because a lot of this is really going to be his discussion, and he especially likes 199A. So Nick, go ahead.
Well, thank you, Max. Yeah, and for people that know me, I'm the adjunct professor for the Graduate Tax Program at Northeastern University in Boston, and for 7 years now, going on 8, lead faculty member in the area of the qualified plan area. So when you type in qualified plans today, also they bring up this one, the qualified business income, otherwise known as the new code section 199A. For the people that are listening to this, this is where the play of tax planning is going to take place in the next, 10 years. I think it expires in the year 2025. But as long as this section is around, this is where we're going to see a lot of the tax planning opportunities that you're going to get involved in. And the reason why 199A is a gift of a magical 20% deduction for people that own small businesses. And so if you're a small business owner and you had $100,000 in income, you can all of a sudden have $80,000 income, basically pass through $20,000 tax-free. Well, that's a great gift, except as we well know, Congress giveth and Congress takes it away. And so there are a lot of rules that may make you not be able to get this wonderful gift. And we're going to go through that today. And also the financial planning opportunities that you have in this area. And we're going to look at how qualified plans can actually help adjust your income so you can qualify under Section 199A. And as you well know, the qualified plans, if you get involved in this, are funded with insurance and annuity products. And this is where the financial advisor comes into play, because you can insert a qualified plan that can change the characteristics so they qualify for 199A, and then once the qualified plan's involved, then the insurance and annuities go inside the qualified plan. So we're going to look at that. So the 199A deduction allows pass-through entities such as S corporations a 20% deduction provided certain income limitations are met. Now these income limitations have magic number, I call them magic numbers in the Internal Revenue Code. In pensions, it's $220,000 a year should be your salary. It's an optimal number. But now we have a new number, and the new number happens to be $157,500, especially if you're a service provider such as a doctor, a lawyer, a financial planner. You can lose the 20% deduction because it phases out if you're a single person making more than $157,500. You get this phase out to all of a sudden you don't even get the deduction anymore. So you have to manage your income to be able to qualify for the deduction. One way to do this, and this is also in this big report I have here, these are all the different ways that you can manage your income. You can do spin-offs of your corporation, you can move other assets around, et cetera. But one other way you can do that is set up a qualified plan to allow the owners to take 20% deduction of their qualified business income. Now, why you as a financial advisor want to get involved in that, if you have CPA relationships, CPAs generally do not work in the area of qualified plans. I know after working with Max for, 15 years plus, that as a third-party administrator, that he finds out, like I do, we're shocked that CPAs don't get involved in qualified plans, especially pension plans and cash balance. The reason why is they don't have the software. You have to buy specific software and have specific licenses, such as enrolled actuary licenses, to do certain work in the area of qualified plans. Otherwise, you're prohibited from working in that. So as you spend time with us and you learn more about how this works, you have a unique selling proposition in working with CPAs by working with the qualified plan area and using qualified plans to help somebody qualify for 199A. And Max put up a great example here. This is like bread and butter. The married doctor, income of $450,000. Now, 450 has a problem right now. There's two thresholds. I said 157,500. That's for a single individual. Above that, you phase out your Section 199A deduction. Remember, you want that deduction. It's 20% tax-free money. But now you've lost it because on a married couple, it's $315,000. Well, they're making $450, so they're phased out almost completely of the 20% 199A deduction. So what you're going to do, and this is what this example does, is you're going to meet with the CPA and or the client, and you're going to show them how we're going to make an adjustment and we're going to get you qualified for Section 199A. So first we're going to look, no qualified plan. You're not going to do anything. Gross earnings, you can see 450. No qualified plan contribution. Net earnings are 450. Pass-through deduction, 0. You don't get the 20% because you fall, and by the way, this would work for dentists, doctors, lawyers, financial planners, CPAs. There's a whole laundry list of service professionals that would qualify for it. They call it SSTBs, but anyway, service professionals that would fall under this problem. So net earnings are 450 and your taxes are 108,872. Well, you as the financial advisor are going to come in with a solution for them. And here's the solution. 450,000, but now we're going to create a qualified plan contribution of 135,000. First thing the CPA is going, oh, that's too high. We know you max out at 54,000 in 2017 and 2018, maybe a little more, but that's the most you can put in any plan. But what you didn't look at is in a pension plan. Pension plans don't have those limitations. It's an actuarial computation based on age and salary. So in a pension, you could put $135,000 away for that client. But here's what it does, and you can see from this example how powerful it is. We just dropped their gross earnings from 450 to 315, a magic number that the government gave us. And 315 is an optimal number. Because we dropped it to 315, now all of a sudden you qualify for the 20% pass-through deduction. And poof, here comes 63,000 in pass-through deductions, giving a net earnings of 252,000, dropping their taxes to 49,059. Now, why CPAs won't do this, unless you're working with a large CPA firm that has enrolled actuaries and qualified pension professionals on staff. Remember, there's only 4,000 enrolled actuaries in the whole United States. Unless you have these people involved, and usually they're just large CPA firms that do, they don't get involved in pensions. So they'll never show the client what I'm just showing you. So this is your unique selling proposition. And if you do a fully insured plan, the $135,000 all goes into life and annuity contracts, actually annuity and life contracts. So for people in the insurance industry, that's what funds pensions. By the way, has funded pensions since 1921. And what you did for the client is you saved them $59,819 in taxes. And what did you do? Just established a pension plan, funded it, but then all the mechanisms that work afterwards give you the ability to save them a huge amount of taxes. And you don't need a securities license to do this. If you have an insurance license, you can do this plan right away for the client, because the $135,000 can all be in an equity indexed annuity, or it could be an equity indexed annuity, a whole life contract, and all of a sudden, voila, you have a perfect plan for a client, and you save them a lot in taxes, and it may not be an option that the CPA has ever looked at for them. So Max, do you have any other things you want to bring up on this slide? I think it's a powerful slide, powerful example, and something you do need to know about. Mr. Max.
Nick's comments about CPAs are very, very true. My own CPA, has talked to me about this, and I asked him. I said, "You've been doing this as a CPA for 27 years. How many classes have you attended that really covered 401ks, pension plans?" He says, "I may have attended 2 or 3 hours in my entire career, and it was never covered in college." And that's the challenge you have with some of this, is that the CPAs are not taught this. In fact, he said he had gone to several classes to learn about SEPs, IRAs, and simples, but he said, "I can't count that many classes that have covered pension plans or profit sharing plans and things like that are more sophisticated." So anyway, that's something that you will run into.
Okay.
So Nick?
Yeah, there's a tax credit. Now, we've been following this tax credit for years. Let's say the client goes, "Well, I've never had a pension or a 401k. I didn't want to get involved in this, but now with this 20% deduction, and I can optimize." And Max has actually purchased software that helps us optimize for a client, because I can tell you this is a complicated area that and you have to run through these calculations to get done right. The small business owner may be able to claim a tax credit for the necessary cost of starting a qualified plan. I can tell you the credit isn't big. It's $500. And we were hoping it's going to be raised to $5,000, but they never passed that. There's a bill to raise it to $5,000. It's never gone through, but they actually get a tax credit of $500 to offset administration cost to set up this qualified plan, which is one reason a lot of clients don't like to get involved in qualified plans, is because of the administration cost. However, if you streamline these plans, you do a lot of them, you can actually get the administration cost and the qualified plan cost down to a very acceptable number for the client. And these are the startup costs. Now I'll talk briefly about the 179 deduction, because when I started law practice 34 years ago or so, I thought, this is brilliant. I can own my own business. I had my own law practice, and I get this deduction when I buy equipment. So as money came into the law firm, I'll buy equipment. I got to write it off. The problem, which somebody didn't tell me, it's a bad retirement plan. Okay. In other words, I bought a PC-1, I think they called it, or something like that, a computer, and I got to write it off. I felt so good about it. A printer, electronic printer. I thought this is really great, laser printer. the real problem with the 179 deduction, and CPAs use this all the time, is yeah, you get to deduct it as it comes in, but it's a horrible retirement plan because these old computers and all this equipment that you can buy that yeah, you can write off, don't grow in value. It depreciates very fast and it's expensed. Right now you get expensed to $1 million, which is a lot. When I started, it was like 25,000. It wasn't very much, but I thought I was thrilled. I used it, but I realized what a horrible retirement plan. Unlike an annuity that grew in value or a life contract that grows in value, the 179 goes down in value and is practically worthless. So they're depreciating assets. They do not make a good retirement plan. I don't care how many John Deere tractors they buy. They're not going to be worth very much in 10 years. I mean, it's just the nature of the beast. So it is a tax planning tool you need to know about, but frankly, it's not a good retirement plan. So do you have anything on the 179, Mac?
CPAs, you as you mentioned, talk about this all the time. We had one client at the end of last year that decided to buy more equipment, and he's 57 years old. And he said, the CPA said he thought that would make my business more valuable if I had this additional equipment. Well, at the end of the day, I said, what appreciation are you going to get out of that equipment? How is it going to make your business more valuable? He says, well, I'll be able to take on a couple of more jobs. And you really start looking at what does that really mean to the value of a business? It has little impact on the value of a business because it's a depreciating asset. And that's a very common thing for CPAs to recommend. My CPA recommended in the year that I had an extremely good year, said, you ought to buy a new car, and I bought that Lexus, and it depreciated. It sucked because I couldn't get what I usually paid for it,
right?
If I wanted to. So those are not always the best deductions. And this next one is a big one Nick and I talked about, because I don't think people that talk about we're going to go to a C corp because the taxes are lower. How do you get money out of a C corp, Nick?
Well, you pay taxes again, and this is one problem, that even though the tax rates are lower, they're 21%, and maybe if you're a large corporation, it was a benefit for you, but small corporations eventually want to get the money to you so you can buy your Lexus, or you can buy a bigger house, or you can buy clothes, or do something with it. The problem is once the money now comes out of the C corporation back to you, you pay taxes again. It's not like the 199A deduction, which 20% comes to you tax-free. So the money goes in here at a lower tax rate, good, but when it comes back to you, it comes back to you at your ordinary income tax rate. So hence, the lower tax rates in a C corporation will not help the vast majority of small business owners. It just isn't going to happen. So it's good for the big corporations, but not for the small individuals. So I don't see this being a great planning opportunity. If people are thinking they're going to convert from an S to a C, I think they really need to take a third or fourth look at this. The S corporation will still be, or even an LLC taxed as an S corporation, will still be your entity of choice, let's put it that way. Yes, Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. It does not impact the qualified plan limits. In other words, and we did a check on this, obviously working in qualified plans. Is this going to have any negative impact? And the answer is basically no. What happens is the qualified plans, especially for large income tax players, will become more valuable because large income taxpayers are now wanting to qualify for 199A. And if you have a client who's making $500,000, they're not going to be able to qualify for 199A unless they insert something like a qualified plan or do something to make sure that they qualify for that 199A deduction. And again, in the pension area, you do get above the 18,500 or 24,000 401k limits, I call it 402G limit. You can put 100, 200, or even 300,000 away in a pension plan that's based on age, compensation, years to retirement, and how long you've worked. So it's actuarially determined how much you can put away in your qualified plan. And if you're in the life insurance industry, the vast majority can be funded with a fixed or equity index annuity and a whole life contract. So those become investment vehicles for the qualified plan. It also doesn't change the fact that contributions expenses remain top of line deduction for clients. So it's something you definitely need to look at. And at one time, and I have to go back into the 1970s, which many of you may or may not have worked in the 70s in the insurance industry, the 70s all the way to TRA 86, 1986. Pension plans were the predominant leader of the life insurance industry. And if you look at it, just look at an annuity of itself. It's like a mini pension plan. You fund it, it grows, then you take a lifetime income out. Pensions are the same way. You fund, you grow, and then you take a lifetime income out. And it's certainly the wave of the future for the people that know about it. But from 86 to 2001, the pension industry was basically destroyed because the rules were adverse. Now they brought the rules back, and now even better for large income taxpayers because of the 199A. But we have a whole group of people, including the insurance industry, that didn't keep the training up because of that period between 1986 and 2001 when pensions weren't necessary. It's similar to and we'll get later, the federal estate tax, which is kind of demolished, doing planning in that area. And we'll get to that later on in the program. So Max, what do you think about JCJA?
Well, this is a big thing what you talked about there. I came in the business in 1983. Now, I know I've dated myself a little bit with that. I don't look nearly as old as that sounds. But when I came into business, one of my mentors was 57 years old. Guess what he specialized in? He did fully insured KEO plans, nothing more than a fully insured defined benefit plan. And he did a lot of other types of defined benefit plans. And he's the one that mentored me in the business. But in 1983, he was 57 years old. And I was wandering around at the time when I was 26 years old with all these people in that industry, and they were all mid-50s and older. Where are those folks today? Well, they're probably in nursing homes or in the grave because they're well beyond their time that they worked. In fact, one of my old friends that brought me into the business, I just saw his picture today, and he's 83 years old. And that's not someone who's practicing in the business anymore. So that whole wealth of knowledge in terms of how to work with these and how to use them strategically in a business is gone. So it becomes a great value proposition for the advisor today because we've got this baby boom generation out there, and they're looking for, how do I retire? They're dealing with mom and dad because, I just dealt with it with my mother-in-law because we had to deal with a nursing home and hospice care and all of those things. And they see that retirement income is important. And something I've started asking people is, what's more important to you when you retire? Is it the dollars you accumulate, or is it the income it provides you? And it's been interesting because they'll sit back and think for a minute. And usually they say, well, it's probably the income it provides me.
Right.
So the income is important, and that's where the defined benefit plans can come into play. So Nick, I'll let you hit on.
Oh yeah, the fiduciary rule. Now I hammered on the fiduciary when it first came out, mainly because it didn't make any sense. And no matter how I played with this 1,032 pages, it didn't make any sense. Unfortunately, I saw the people in North Carolina and our senators agreed it didn't make any sense. I wanted to see the other side because they don't understand why it doesn't make any sense. Well, in a very famous case, which you're probably all aware of, and my hat's off to NAFA for hanging in there, buddy, is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce versus the DOL, Department of Labor. Then we're in there in March 15th, 2018, the DOL lost in the Fifth Circuit. And reading the logic, rightfully so. I know where they want to get to, but the way they're getting to it isn't the right way to get there. So since the DOL abandoned the enforcement of the rule, a big victory for NAFA. And thank you, because in the pension plan we worked at, Max and I have been pulling our hairs out, respectfully, trying to figure out how we could ever get these things to qualify under the fiduciary rule, because the rule had too many unanswered questions. So I said, we're going to, this was a home run for litigators, but not a home run for you, your clients, or for anybody who has sanity who's working in the area, and I can go through it point by point, which I did. If this comes up again, yes, I will go up to Washington, D.C. and talk to our friends on the other side of the aisle why it doesn't make sense, because I don't think they got it even today. But right now it's gone. Now the SEC is looking for their version of the rule. However, it will not affect people that are working in the insurance industry, at least right now, because they don't have jurisdiction over them. But if you're a securities license, you're going to have to follow that rule and figure out where this fiduciary rule is going to be. One problem with the fiduciary rule in general, is the vagueness of the rule that takes place. Yeah, there's a whole litany of trust law out there, but not so much in general practice. But there's, like I say, I have a whole laundry list of reasons why the rule should not be implemented as is. Surprised it got that far, but the Fifth Circuit was right. Get rid of it, and they're not going to enforce it. So it's basically dead, which is good, because I can't believe how we were going to be able to manage with that rule in effect. Max, any other comments you have on the fiduciary rule? Let's bury this one.
Also interesting is I'm curious to see what the states who are now, a few of the states, like my neighboring state, Nevada, is their own version of the fiduciary rule.
Yeah.
And you've already said that, some of the people I've talked to there, that it has hurt, some business there, and it's just created more confusion. So I don't know if the battle is over. I wish it was totally. And I do, compliment NAFA, because they stepped in there on this one to get rid of something that didn't make sense. So
yeah, and
it is.
And, 3 years ago when this rule first came up or so, I told my graduate tax class at Northeastern, you don't have to read it, because I don't want you to read 1,032 pages of a rule that may never be implemented. Now, I was sticking my neck out, but the rule was so bad, I just felt that this thing's going to die somewhere down the line. And there's so many things that you do need to know. The last thing you need to know is a 1,032 page rule that you don't need to know. So we never studied it. I went over it briefly, what they were doing, and then we went on to study things that made sense. Okay, federal estate tax. Oh, Lord. Now, I started in the industry. Max started in what was it, 82 or 83? I started in 1984. Okay, in estate planning. So, and I segued over to pensions in 2001 when they repealed the federal estate tax, effective in 2010. And all my buddies said, "You're crazy. Why are you jumping out of estate planning?" I said, "Dude, I got my red slip 10 years from now." I said, "They don't need an estate tax attorney if there's no estate tax." "Oh, they're going to put a patch on it." Guess what? They never did. So I left and have not returneth. Okay, now what have they done? Well, they brought back the estate tax, but let's take a look at it. 11.2 million exempt per person, 22.4 for a married couple. Well, that takes out almost everybody. So those second to die policies that I sold, because I was in sales, I was what they call a top of the table person back in 93. It's all, forget it. Okay, the thing is, your how you say it, your qualified prospects are so slim and so few that it's almost impossible to sell a second to die policy, because there just aren't enough prospects to sell a second to die policy anymore. And now we also have a knowledge mismatch. We have more people who know about how to do it. When I started, there was only 2 insurance companies that had second to die policies, Mutual Benefit Life and Manulife. Then there was a huge body of knowledge, but now the opportunities have shrunk, because when I started, there was only 600,000 that was exempt, not 11.2 million. Now, what's good about this? I mean, this is gravy for your top 1%, because you still get a step up in basis for all the assets. So if you die and you have 20 million, but you purchase these assets for 2 million, but they grew, once your children inherit it, they could sell all 22 million and not pay any capital gains taxes. So it's still a way that you can plan to eliminate capital gains taxes. But if you're a financial advisor trying to sell a second to die policy, or doing things, setting up an irrevocable insurance trust, I think you're TOL for a while. Gifts of $15,000 per person is allowed. We used to use that all the time to fund the second to die policies. But again, your your marketplace has shrunk so greatly that this place is dead. Not much left for the old bread and butter estate planning cases. So good luck with that. So I'll segue over to Max, and let's talk about something that has opened up Mr. Max?
This is about 401H. And probably if I asked 100 and something people that looks like they've tuned in, how much do you know about 401H? Most of you would probably go, what's that? And really, it's a great tool. Now, you can only have it in a pension, but a 401H allows a client to fund it with tax-deductible dollars and receive tax-free benefits coming out. What's it for? A 401H is a post-retirement health benefit account that can be attached to a pension plan. And you can go in and buy long-term care policies. You could fund it with some of the qualifying long-term care annuities. And you can fund it in addition to the pension contribution, further lowering your income for 199A, because you can fund it with up to 25% of your contributions to a pension. And it can be in addition to the pension contribution. It does have to be administered. It does have some things that you have to do. And the funds have to be used for post-retirement medical expenses. But there are lots of ways to deal with this account and make it one that works very, very well for you and for the client. Just spoke to a client last week, and he's dealing with a mother-in-law. And he specifically asked if there was a way for him to buy long-term care insurance. And I said, well, for your mother-in-law, she's already in the nursing home, that might be challenging. But you could do it on yourself and your wife and make it tax deductible and receive the benefits tax-free. He said, tell me how I do it. I discussed the 401H account, and he specifically had us send him the documents, which Nick did, so that we could make sure that his pension plan had that in the plan, and he wants to now fund that 401H because he says, I don't want to leave all the choices in my kids' hands, because I'd like to have the money sitting there that they need to use for long-term care to take care of me. Because one of the big arguments that we're having as a family right now is, how do we pay for this? And then the kids are talking about, well, how does that impact our inheritance with all the money we're spending on mom? So this is a real thing because people are living longer. The one thing medical science has done is made us live longer, but it has not necessarily improved that quality of life as we live longer. Because, we live to be 89 or 96 or whatever it is, or maybe 100. But, how do we pay for all that because of the medical expenses? I've always used my mother-in-law, who passed away recently, as my poster child because, she took care of my father-in-law. And then after a couple of years of caring for him, and a few years living independently, went into an assisted care setting. And in that assisted care setting, she was forking out for over 10 years, over $5,000 a month for her care. And that's not cheap. And I have another client whose wife was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. When she went into the Alzheimer's unit, it was over $7,000 a month. And when she finally died, they had got to the point that it was over $9,000 a month for her care. And that can put a serious dent into a person's retirement plan. So a 401H account is a great tool. And, when you think about it, how many tools can you have out there that allow you to deduct the money going in and take it out tax-free? I think most people would say that's probably the best of both worlds. Nick, do you have any other comments on 401H?
Yeah, I do. The thing is the IRS hates tax deductions going in, tax-free money coming out, because it's not what they call tax neutral, for where pensions and 401ks, et cetera, are tax neutral. Someday in the future, you're going to pay the taxes. However, 401Hs are one of the few places that you can go to that get tax deductions going in, tax-free money coming out. Now, clients all love that. However, they must realize it has to be used for post-retirement medical. And younger clients going, well, what's that? Well, there's a lot that Medicare doesn't cover. They don't cover 100% of your medical needs to begin with, but they also don't cover things like dental care or certain things like long-term care. Medicare doesn't cover everything. The actuaries did a study, and they said that if you retire at age 65, by the time you die, the average person will accumulate $350,000 in post-retirement medical needs that aren't covered by Medicare. So this is one place that you can do additional funding. So we did some research on it. Max and I spent, I hate to say it, years looking at this wonderful code section. And most volume submitter, if not all volume submitter or prototype documents, do not have the 401H language in. Doing research further, what happens, attorneys have to specially draft the 401H language into the document so you can get the 401H benefits out. And you can't do this in a 401k, and you can't do this in a profit sharing. It has to be done in a defined benefit pension plan. But your small defined benefit pension plans can put this in, and like Max says, you get an additional deduction up to 25% of your contribution in a 401H account that's segregated, that can be used to fund for these benefits, and you can even buy special policies, annuity and life contracts to fund for these benefits. So you as a producer, and you'd have to talk to Max about, there's special policies that you can use inside the 401H account once someone sets up a pension plan. So I think it's great for the client who can afford to do this and also is interested in doing this. The 401H is available.
Now let's talk a little bit about some of the other things that are out there, the 401k, SEPs, and all those things. There are some changes. They increased the funding limit to $18,500, compensation limits to $275,000, defined contribution plans to $55,000. They upped the lifetime limit on the defined benefit plan to $220,000. Defined benefit plans can be funded with traditional investments, or they can be fully insured plans funded with qualifying indexed annuities or fixed annuities and life insurance products. And that's something, that qualifying there I have in quotes, because that's something that is very important. Not every company has the right products. It does have to be a certain kind of whole life. It does have to be certain kinds of annuities, but there are still a lot of them out there that fit the bill, and there's some real potential with those. So here's one of the questions that I always get, because everybody thinks, well, I'm going to have my client set up a SEP. That's a qualified plan. But in reality, what is a SEP, Nick?
It's an IRA. It's even called a SEP IRA.
And that's what they are. They're not qualified plans. They're just simply an employer-sponsored plan. Mm-hmm. And so a qualified plan, even though the employer, sponsors it, which is part of the rules on this, it must also meet certain Internal Revenue Code for both, operation and substance. And IRA accounts are not qualified plans. Yes, SEPs and SIMPLES are employer-sponsored, but it's important to understand that they're not a qualified plan. So what is a qualified plan? Well, you look at it, it's, a cash balance, a combo, a simple, fully insured, profit sharing. They show SEPs in there, but really when we eliminate those, that's going to narrow the field some. Because right here, you now have the fully insured, defined contribution, defined benefit, safe harbor, profit sharing. Those are all true qualified plans. Now, if you want to take advantage of the ones that can benefit the client for 199A, then that narrows the field even further. So you now have cash balance plans, you have fully insured plans, you have defined benefit, you have 412(b)(3)s, but you limited the world because they're not going to work with what you need to have for meeting 199A. So really, you've narrowed it down to a couple of things that are more popular today, and that's the cash balance combo plans and the fully insured or 412(b)(3) plans. So let's talk about that new hot item. Nick, why don't you touch on this a little bit?
Yeah, the cash balance plans, and we're going to look at this later on, the high growth in the industry, growing like 600% in the last 12 years. And they were introduced actually in the 1980s. They're defined benefit plans, but look like a defined contribution plan because everything's based on basically contributions and interest that grows on contributions, as opposed to traditional that's based on your income, which can change, and a lifetime income. So the account balances and pay credits and interest credits is what the cash balance plan is based on. You get higher benefits limits, higher contributions, et cetera. So there's some good things about cash balance plans, something you do need to know about. And yes, you can fund whole life contracts, even universal life contracts and annuity contracts, all into a cash balance plan. So the funding can take place very similar to a fully insured plan. The difference is the rules and actuarial assumptions are a little bit different in a cash balance than they're in a fully insured. So what does the IRS have to say about this, Mr. Max?
Well, it's kind of like the tumbleweed and the grasshopper. The IRS has done very little since this whole thought on cash balance plans came about back in the early 90s. And yes, the tumbleweed blows, but it blows pretty quietly, and all you hear is the chirp of the crickets. So basically what happened in 2006, we had the Pinch Protection Act, and it gave legs to the cash balance plans, because in the Pension Protection Act, it clarified the rules and the funding options and how they worked. And what that did is it created the new hot plan. No, and there are some, there's a double-edged sword to that new hot plan that we'll talk about here in a minute. But it is something I think everybody needs to know about. Sometimes, and I am a registered investment advisor, but the stock jockeys out there love cash balance plans, because my old theory on that is if all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail. And that's somewhat how they think. They forget about the true uses and planning strategies and go to that cash balance plan, because they typically are funded with traditional investment products, not necessarily insurance contracts. But, where's it all at with cash balance plans? Well, Nick and I were talking about that. Since 2006, the number of cash balance plans has increased by over 600%. Last time I checked, that's a pretty good growth rate. Cash balance plans make up 25% of all defined benefit plans. Now, here's the key. 87% of cash balance plans and fully insured pension plans are sponsored by firms with fewer than 100 employees. So these plans have a niche market, because that's the way they work. Now, Nick, you had some specific comments on this as well.
Yeah, well, what you're going to see with cash balance plans is that, and we're going to get them next in the program, and the reason why they're popular with small businesses, because you're basing your contribution now on age and salary, and you can skew the contributions to the older, highly compensated employees, who are generally the business owners. So because it's skewed to older, highly compensated employees, we're going to look at examples of this, they've become a hot potato for people that are in the in any industry. So this is one reason you're seeing a large growth in cash balance plans, something that you're going to need to know about it, because again, the funding can be insurance, annuity contracts, but like Max said, you can also add mutual funds and stocks into the program to allow a large deduction for the client and also huge benefits later on. So as you can see, the cash balance plans defines annual pay, credits, and interest earned. So it's based on the amount that you have in the plan, and then targets a benefit at retirement. Now you can also set up a profit sharing plan, because this is a big rule that all the actuaries know. You don't need to bring all your employees into the cash balance. 40% go into cash balance. You can move 60% over into a profit sharing plan and give them a different benefit, which could be in a different contribution, which could be lower than they would get in the pension plan. So using these combos, what they call cross-tested, DB/DC, they're the hottest ticket out there in the actual community, because, and you're going to see later on in our example, the business owner gets large deductions in their pensions, get them where they want to go, and then the employees are in the 401k profit sharing plan. And here's a good example right here we're looking at, Mr. Max.
Here's a small law firm that we created, but it is a typical example. You've got Joe, who's 50, he's earning 270, Sharon, who's 40, earning 140, and then you have Doug, the young guy at 32, getting 26,000, okay? Now, in that plan, boy, that's a complicated planning process. You look at that group. Well, here's what you do. First of all, Sharon's benefits, you could make zero, because she's highly compensated. You could negotiate a different compensation package for her that may not include her participation in the pension plan. Now you have Doug, you could put him over in the profit sharing plan. And by doing that, Doug's contribution would be about $2,300. Okay, and the plan, by doing that, by the way, is not discriminatory. You're basically using the plan to pass testing. So by doing that, you'll see at age 50, we're considering $154,000 of Doug's comp, At age 65, he'll have a lifetime benefit in the pension of $220,000 a year, or 81.5% of his current pay. And then the younger gentleman over here is going to have a little different situation because he's 32 years old. He has a lot of years to get to age 65. And so because of that, we're funding $2,300 a year, which will get him to $23,140 of annual benefit, or 89% of pay. Therefore, it passes the test. It's non-discriminatory. So really, when you look at these plans, cash balance combos or fully insured plans even, they work better with older, higher paid employers, typically age 45 or older, and younger, lower paid employees. One of our poster child clients was a business in Colorado that was part of Colorado's new growth industry. And the owners were well over 55, and all the other employees were under 30 for the most part. And so it allowed the owners to make very large contributions to their defined benefit plan and very small contributions. In fact, in their case, 92% of all contributions, a little over 92% actually, went to the owners, while only about 7%, 7.5% went to the others. Now, there is one problem when you're funding a cash balance plan if you're using strictly your traditional investments of mutual funds, stocks, bonds, etc. And that is, how do you avoid overfunding and underfunding? Nick, you might want to touch on that just a little bit.
Yeah, see, the problem of the cash balance plan, which a lot of the people that provide cash balance plans don't explain to clients. First of all, they're more expensive to administer. You know, if you roll a fully insured plan, maybe it's $1,500 a year, but when you do cash balance, $5,000 a year to administer, and it makes a difference. Administration expenses on small plans make a difference. Your clients don't want to pay the extra expenses to administer the cash balance plan. Now, if you get large accounts where people putting in $1 million or more, then of course they don't mind. Or they do mind, but they'll go ahead and pay the $5,000 to $15,000 to administer the cash balance. But another problem that's not brought out too often is the overfunding and underfunding issues of cash balance. Everybody's looking for these great returns, and one of the plans we were managing, Max and I, the person put all their retirement in Apple stock. Now, normally that's not allowed because he didn't diversify it, but it was a single employer, so he did it. Well, the problem is he made too much money. And he had so much money that you get hit with a reversion tax of 50% because you made too much. It's an excise tax. You fill out a 5330 and you get hit with the 50% penalty because you're overfunded. Another penalty, but we haven't seen it in years, is the underfunding penalty. Again, you fill out Form 5330 and you just didn't perform well enough. The stock market went down. You get penalized a two-tier, 10%. And then 100% of the amount of underfunding. Now, the only reason why you haven't heard a lot about the market has increased since 2008. But in 2008, when I was working in the industry, we had several plans that were underfunded because the market crashed and their plans crashed. And the clients had to come up with $37,000 and $250,000 in tax penalties. Again, a lot of the people that provide these plans don't explain the underfunding and overfunding penalties because it doesn't really fit the mantra of what cash balance plans are trying to do. Now, in the fully insured plan, you don't have the problem. Why is that? Because annuities have guarantees in them. You don't lose money in annuity. Same with guaranteed whole life contracts, guarantees. Because of the inability to lose money, you don't run into the underfunding issue. Now, technically, you could be overfunded if the annuity or the insurance contract takes off, but they never do. These are fixed or equity index annuities, insurance products. And then if they do take off, you actually every year reduce the contribution to the extent it exceeds the target. And that's in the code. So what happens in fully insured plans, you basically eliminated the overfunding, underfunding penalties. It's kind of a simplified plan or simplified chassis that you're running off of. So we have Gail, who's age 55, and Max, maybe you want to take a look and see what you're doing with her.
Well, Gail owns her own company. She's a sub-S. You'll find these. They have no retirement savings to date or very little. No life insurance currently, but they'd like to have some permanent insurance. They just never have been able to justify it to themselves. They want the maximum amount possible saved, and they want large tax deductions, but they're also a little adverse to market volatility because they're the person that may have had a 401k, and like one person said to me, my 401k became a 201k during 2008, and they don't want that again. And so they want to look at something different. So here's an example of two different plans, the cash balance plan and a fully insured plan, and what you could put into it. And Nick, you might want to address why you can have the differences we show here in contribution.
Yeah, you notice the cash balance you put in 189, but in the fully insured 237. One reason is the actual assumptions. On the cash balance, you're running like a 5.5% rate of return. The fully insured, the guaranteed rate of the annuity in the insurance contract and the guaranteed annuity conversion rates. With that, you can put 142,000 into the annuity, and this is kind of an average case that we've seen, 95,000 to life insurance. Now, the 95,000 life insurance, it's changed so much since I worked in the area back in 2001, 2002. The insurance products are so much better. These contracts return all the premiums plus a profit. Back then, that didn't happen. Plus provide long-term care, chronic illness, terminal illness, plus a death benefit, which it's designed to do to replace the income to the surviving spouse and children in the event the breadwinner dies. So the insurance actually operates in a lot better space. It provides more than just life insurance benefits than it did when I worked in the industry back in 2002. The products weren't like this. So the products today are 10 times better than they were back then. And the clients and even the CPAs have never seen these. Hey, I put the premiums in, I get it all back plus a profit, which then supplements my retirement. So you have a much better product space than you've ever worked in today. So what do we have here, Max? Values at retirement?
Well, here's retirement. In her case, would be $2.5 million guaranteed. After 10 years of contributions, you'd have $800,000 in cash value, or right at $800,000 in cash value in the insurance contract, and just a hair over $1.7 million in the annuity contract. Mm-hmm. And that provides her the guaranteed benefit lump sum of $2.5 million. So that's what you get out of it. So who does it work best for? A fully insured plan. A lot of professionals or owners of businesses with few employees, older, highly paid owners, age 45 plus, and all this probably sounds similar to the cash balance plan because they're similar.
They are similar.
No investment risk. So they don't have the risk of overfunding, underfunding. They don't have the risk of 2008. I will never forget in 2008 or 2009 when I had to tell a client that we needed to pay an $8,000, $8,800 penalty in his case, and we also needed about $80,000 in additional contributions to his annual contribution that he needed to make to his defined benefit plan. Yeah. As they'd say in the Boy Scouts, he was not a happy camper. Yeah. And that's a rough message to deliver.
Yeah, but in the fully insured plans, we got a lot of phone calls. They want to know, how's our fully insured plan doing? The market's down 37%. We were up 4.5%. It had nothing to do with the market. So it's great.
Yeah. So when you look at these two, they both provide guaranteed benefits at retirement. A contribution is required. You can put insurance in both versions. You have a contribution range, minimum and maximum. You have a similar contribution range in the fully insured plan. You can add a profit sharing plan, and it's usually included. The same thing with the fully insured plan. We can add the profit sharing plan and cross test them. You have the same benefits, or you can vary benefits by class of employees. A lot of people aren't aware that you can do that. We do tiered benefit formulas all the time. Now, here's your big difference. Market risk is with the business owner in the cash balance. The fully insured plan, market risk is with the insurance company because we're dealing with guaranteed insurance contracts. And that changes the world. The other big difference is the cost of administration and all of those things, because the cost of administration for a fully insured plan, you know, Nick mentioned it might be $1,500 to set it up and $1,500 a year. A cash balance plan, you know, we've taken over one that I think they were paying $11,900 in administration for the cash balance plan. So That's not an unusual number at the end of the day. So I think we're getting towards the end of the time we had allotted for all this, and there are probably questions. I haven't looked over here in our chat room for a bit.
Yeah, we have a chat room for questions, and also we have a website, nationalpensions.com, that you can get more information on pension plans and how to integrate them with Section 199A.
And if you wanted to talk to us, we're available too for consultations. And we do a lot of joint work with advisors, and we do via GoToMeeting all over the country. Our brick and mortar presence is in Utah, but we don't even do 10% of our plans in Utah. They tend to be every place else. So we do them all over, and the advisor locally becomes the boots on the ground to help it all get done. Yeah. But if there are any questions, Brendan, do you want to field those and hand them off to us?
Yes, thanks. I'd be happy to, and we do have quite a few questions already. The first one is the slides and audio being recorded, and will access be made available on the NAIFA website afterwards? And the answer is yes. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive an email automatically. They'll provide you with the web link that you can use for presentation. Next question, will you talk about collectives, please?
Collectives?
I'm not sure what the context is.
I'm not sure what the context of that is. I do know if you're looking at 199A, there's certain areas like REITs and collectives that may be involved, but they were specialty areas, and even the attorneys have said declined to go into that at that point in time. If you're looking at collectives being put into these plans, the answer is no. So I'm not sure the context of the question.
All right. The next question is, why was Sharon at zero benefit in the last example?
Because she was a highly compensated employee, and when I saw that, I was going, "Hey, Max," when we went over all the discrimination areas. But here's the answer to the question: if you're making more than $120,000 a year, or you're a 5% shareholder, you're deemed a highly compensated employee, and the benefits are negotiable, subject to there's a test 1/2 of 1% times years of compensation normal retirement age. In other words, you don't have to have a benefit for a person who's highly comp. There's no non-discrimination testing. Now, the problem I have with it, of course, has nothing to do with that. You could have Bob there and the same thing would take place. It's the lack of non-discrimination testing for highly compensated employees. Now, what normally happens, you do what they call a tiered benefit formula, and you have different contributions per different partners that are making more than $120,000 per year, or 5% shareholder. So that's the reason why you don't have to include. And the other thing is you don't have to include everybody in the plan. Remember, 40% of eligible employees go in the plan.
You also have one other out too. You have the family attribution rules. We'll see lots of businesses where you have a spouse and perhaps children, or a mother or father that are participating in the business, and you can do different things for them than you might normally have to do and fall under the non-discrimination rules. So you do have some variables and some ways to manage the census, so to speak, of the business to make sure that it fulfills the goals of the business owner.
And the next question, was NAIFA the only organization opposing the DOL rule? The answer to that is no. And I would like to thank all the other organizations that oppose that, especially coming to mind at the moment is ACLI. We thank ACLI for all their support and work with NAIFA on this. The next question, how do you convince that doctor to take a pay cut to fund the 199A? Most doctors I see spend $550,000 when their income is $450,000.
Yeah, good question. But see, here's the thing. It's not really a pay cut to fund the 199A, because remember, the 199A is passed through to them, and so what happens? They're going to get that money anyway. It's just passed through to them. So what happens is, let's say if you had $315,000 in salary and $200,000 in 199A deductions. Well, the 199A is passed through to them on a K1. They get that money too. Now, if they can't save the 135 in a qualified plan, which they could do and borrow out 50% of the account up to 50,000, then they really need some serious financial planner to sit with them because they're if they're and I understand that they're running tight on making 500,000 a year, but they really need to spend more time looking at their tax liability and their financial planning and less time on their practice. I looked at it a long time ago and I said, doctors should take 3 months off and learn about tax planning and they'll be ahead of the game. But they don't know that.
Nick's comments are interesting. I literally last night saw a gentleman who was a dentist who I saw in a social setting, and he's been trying to retire. He's 72 years old, and he's still trying to retire. And he said part of it was I never got into saving for retirement. And just picking on dentists for a second, if you go to the ADA, the average dentist at age 55 has less than $370,000 put away for retirement. Yet that average dentist is making over $350,000 a year. So if they're going to live on 70 or 80% of their pre-retirement income, they've got to figure out a way to save. So those are people who are playing catch up, so to speak, meaning they have not saved for retirement or have saved significantly less than they should. And so they're looking for ways to contribute more because they realize they've got to retire, just like this person who's 72 years old. He said, at the rate I'm going, I need to work 5 more years and put away significant amounts of money to afford to retire.
Yeah.
And he's 72. He's going to be 77.
Yeah.
And that's, I've seen that happen multiple times. I mean, there's a podiatrist that I know here in our town, and he and I have had discussions because he has the same issues. He says, I've got to figure out how to retire. He says, what's a reverse mortgage like for someone like me? Because he's got a $700,000 home.
Yeah.
And so working with those professionals, and frankly, I think there was something in the medical journals that was out there a few years ago. Nick will probably remember this, where it said that most medical practitioners that are not employees of the hospital or something like that should be considering defined benefit plans so that they can catch up on their retirement, because they all fit a profile. They work for a number of years, going to school, getting an education. They take out student loans. They then take a while to pay off the loans, to establish their practice, and to establish a lifestyle. And suddenly they look in the mirror and they look like me. There's a lack of hair and maybe a little gray fringe around the edge. And they say, wow, I'm not going to be able to do this forever. I got to figure out a way to retire. And they've got a balance over here because we've got lots of dentists. And I will tell you right now, the dentists and a lot of the medical practitioners we work with, before we started working with them, their entire retirement balance was less than $400,000 or $500,000, and they were making $600,000 plus, but they had not saved for retirement. So that's a common issue. But you're right; a lot of them have established a lifestyle that requires such a big chunk that they struggle with. How do I do it? In fact, my own dentist and I have had this conversation, and he just says, I am hoping that a business venture I've entered into is going to pay me the big dollars. Because he says, otherwise I'm in trouble.
Yeah.
We are running out of time, but we're going to ask Nick and Max to work a little overtime here, and this is being recorded. So if you're unable to stay with us for the live broadcast, you'll see the whole thing on the recording. Otherwise, we're going to hit a few more questions. Doesn't the client have to buy the life insurance policy back out of the pension later?
No, actually they don't. What they can do is terminate the plan for the cash surrender value, and the cash surrender value plus the annuity becomes their retirement benefit. So there's no purchase out of the plan. And like I say, the policies that we're looking at are policies that return all the premiums plus a profit. So what happens at the end of the day, the cash value of the policy plus the annuity all gets rolled into an IRA that they can then put in stocks, bonds, and mutual funds. So the purchase out of the policy is not required at all. Traditionally what happens, they keep the policies until normal retirement age, and then they terminate the plan, take all the life annuity contracts, roll to an IRA, and they move on with their retirement. The example Max showed, that if you add both of them together, they had $2.5 million in cash that will all go into an IRA that you as the financial advisor will now manage in their IRA.
And you you do have some options at that point of maintaining the pension plan and creating a guaranteed income for life. You do have the option of buying it out earlier, and that, we could certainly discuss offline with somebody. And there are a couple of companies we're working with that are working on options to buy the net amount at risk out of the plan to maintain protection after retirement.
Right.
If you read Dr. Wade Fowle's white paper, he pretty much puts into that a discussion about the combination of insurance contracts, annuities, and investments making up the most secure retirement plan. So yeah, there's some evidence out there that kind of shows that a combination of those things works best.
We're going to go ahead and get two more questions in. There was a question about talking about collectives, and collective is a new business formation like a corporation that has no 199 phase out. So thank you for that information. That's probably something we can cover a little bit.
That might be in the regulations that are yet to be promulgated. So remember, 199A, they were instructed to have regulations. Regulations aren't out. And there's a whole litany of areas that still haven't been, that have no regulations. I call them black holes in the law, so guess as good as mine.
And our final question is that it's a four-part question. Is the pension plan taxable when used? How does this affect married filing separately? I'll let our presenters go ahead and cover the first two first so not to overwhelm them.
Yeah, it would be taxable on distribution, except the 401h side can come out tax-free. But other than that, as the monies are distributed, they would be taxable income at that point in time. Married filing separately, it doesn't matter. The deduction is at the corporate level. So what happens is the corporation, or the S or the C corporation, actually takes the deduction on line 19 or line 23 as a corporate deduction. It's not an individual deduction.
And is this a good program for low-income earners, such as those earning $50,000 a year?
No. That's a really easy. Generally, here's what I've seen in this market for the last, I guess, 17 years or so. It's not for people that are earning less than 50,000 a year. As a matter of fact, most of the lowest contribution we've seen in pensions are around 65,000. And fully insured, the highest was 2,134,000 per year. And so it's for the high income taxpayers who are looking for tax deductions, who max out, or they realize their 401k, they can't get it there because the 401k, after around 24,000, there's no more deductions. So these are people who are looking to put away 100, 200, or 300,000 a year tax deductible. That doctor making 500,000, first he complains, but then he finds out 50% of his pension contribution is funded by his tax savings. Then all of a sudden, hey, a 50% rate of return is pretty high. And so you try to guide them to where they need to go to be able to fund in 135,000. I think our average contribution right now is 200,000 a year, with around 70 or 80,000 in life premium and around 130,000 in annuity premium.
And our last question, and actually part 4 of the question, but it's actually a separate question, is on the 401h. Can this be used instead of buying a Medicare supplemental?
It could be, yes. Rather than having a Medicare supplement plan, you just draw down on your 401h.
Great. Well, I want to thank Nick Falavita and Max Colliet so much for their time and expertise today. We always appreciate hosting them here on NAIFA webinars. As a reminder, their contact website, www.nationalpensions.com, is visible right now on your screen at the bottom of that slide. So if you'd like to get in touch with them, I know that we couldn't get to all the questions today, all the excellent questions that you had. And I would also like to thank all of our NAIFA members who participated on the webinar today for taking time out. Again, this webinar was recorded and will be emailed to you within a few business days. This concludes the NAIFA webinar.
Thanks for having us. Have a great day.